Afternoon. Welcome to the June 25th special call meeting of the Board of Commissioners. It's a work session this afternoon. We have three topics. One will be a presentation of the county-wide master plan for the Parks Department. The second one will be a presentation on the Cobb County Transit Service Plan and some of the findings of that so far. And then the third one will be a presentation on the status of the Northwest Corridor Express lanes. So the first presentation, it'll be from Jimmy Giese about the countywide master plan for the parks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As anytime you go on a trip, you always need a map to go by, and that's what any department master plan does for you. Our last master plan was done back in 2002. It was also completed by Lowson Associates, who completed this version as well. So we have a proposed roadmap for you that we'd like to present to you and give you some feedback from our plan. If I could only make it click. There it goes. All right, this is a 2016 Park Splosh project. It was an approved project in that program. The board did approve it at the end of 2016, and we used 2017 to carry out the plan. As I mentioned, Lowson Associates did prepare the plan. And included in the process is public engagement, the facility assessments for what we currently have. We also benchmarked community trends, and then they analyzed our programming, our operations, our staffing, and our budget. As with any plan, they do some front-end community profiling. I'm sure you have seen this in previous master plans of population projections. In 1990 to 2000, we were up 36%, 13% from 2000 to 2010, and then 8% in that last time frame. One of the telling factors here in the community profile as far as the age goes, as you can see, a lot of the younger age groups are starting to decline, but then that age group from 45 to 64, 25 to 44, you see a tremendous amount of growth. 25 to 49 is coming down, and then 45 and up. That's your baby boomer effect, and so planning for the elderly is becoming very important. The community profile as far as economics, we were benchmarked against DeKalb County, Gwinnett County, and Davidson County, Tennessee, which is Nashville. That shows our median household income. As well as on the right graph, the homeownership rates, the percent of persons below the poverty level. We're doing better than some of our communities, but that is still a very large mission that we have to reach that 11.1%. And then a median value of ownership. Yes, sir.
Go back to that last chart for a
Okay.
second. I didn't get a chance to look at all.
And you said elderly, you meant active adults, didn't you?
Well, seeing's how I is one, yes, sir.
Okay,
I
I'd
don't know
prefer
about the
that
active
term,
part.
okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Active
thank you.
adults,
Thank you.
aging active adults, there we go.
So it looks like by every standard, Cobb sets the standard.
Doing very well in the median household income as well as the other one, yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
This is one that I was really proud of, and I would like to think that our department has a lot to do with this. It is the percentage of adults with obesity. National benchmark, 25% went up to 26% from 2012 to 17. The Georgia average went up from 28% to 30%, but in Cobb, we actually came down from 24 to 23% during that same time frame. We do offer a wide range of facilities and venues for our folks to get out and get active. So what we're doing seems to be working pretty well.
Do you have a breakdown in that age group, though, of the 23% of which age group is, like 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60?
I'm sure we can get that because this was done through the statistically valid survey, and that was one of the criteria they had to submit. So we can pull that for you, yes. The process that our consultant went through is staff interviews, focus groups, steering committees, public input meetings. It's your typical master planning process. But some of the numbers over on the right are telling. We had right at 3,300 participants with 7 public meetings around the county. We had 93 provider and interest group meetings, everything from horse riders to lacrosse supporters to youth sports supporters. We had 266 folks come to our public input meetings, 2,497 through the community-wide survey. Now, that can sometimes be tainted because they can go in and enter their information multiple times. But it's that bottom one, the 439 who were part of the statistically valid survey, which we pulled most of our information today to share with you.
But the 3,200 people, that's a valid number.
Yes, sir.
That's amazing.
Yes, sir. Out of the respondents who had children in their household who participated in youth sports, this is the breakdown of their participation. Of course, baseball is always going to be one of the highest numbers. Soccer has grown tremendously. It was only at about 30% when we did the 2002 survey, so it is continuing to grow. Softball, football, and a lot of the others that you see all across the country. In the statistically valid survey, folks were asked, what are your top 5 activities that you participate in? And walking and hiking, running, marathon, triathlons. We're starting to see a lot of individual sports for your 25 and up population. The participation in team sports is coming down, but the participation in individual activities is going up. Then they were asked in that table 3.3, what would you like to participate in? And those are numbers and not percentages. We had 17 out of the 439 that actually thought swimming, aquatic related activities, yoga, tennis, and yoga is something that we don't have a lot of. We do a lot of facility rentals in our centers, and we don't do that much as far as programming, going out and finding an instructor and letting them offer the program. So we've learned some lessons through this.
So you're saying 17 people out of the
439.
wanted to do aquatics. And
Those
if you
are the
go back to
highest.
the previous slide, aquatics was one of the lowest participations we
Yes,
have.
sir.
So I'm not sure what this tells us.
Well, for them to be able to say what other activities that they want to do, these were just the highest numbers. Of course, with any human being, their wishes and their wants are going to be all over the place. But these were your highest numbers.
Now, these were only our parks and not the city
Correct.
parks, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Barriers to park usage, why aren't you using county parks? And then 25.6% just don't have time. And that would be the same whether it's for federal parks, city parks, county parks. Other facilities are used, 12.4 was high. Bad health, too old. I won't even touch that one. We're not seeing a lot of things like your parks are in terrible condition or you didn't have one right next door to my house. While they're in there, they're in small percentages. Okay. The respondents were also given options of different type facilities that they would like to see. And then they were also given the opportunity to provide other, and as you can see, the other come in at 39%. But if you look at the top 2 positive responses that we got, paved trails and more natural surface trails were the highest, and that's 36.4%. So I think we're really seeing what a lot of the folks want to see. They want to see more trails, more connectivity, whether it be asphalted trails alongside the highway or natural use trails in our centers.
I'll back up for a minute, Jimmy. The 39.6%, was there a no change option? I mean, was there an option that said to folks that the facilities we have were adequate?
No, sir. It was just, what would you like to see?
Okay.
Okay. One of the other questions was, if there is future capital funding for the park system, what would be your preference? I believe the 49.4% is a living testament to the good job that we've done through the years of utilizing SPLOST funds to improve our park system. But 49.4% vote, that was their first choice. Second choice was a bond program. impact fees, and then dedicated millage was come in a resounding last. They were asked, how much of a yearly increase to your current household property taxes would you support if it helps to improve maintenance and parks programs? And it was broken down to $5 or less, and I kind of did a cumulative exercise where if you look at $5 or less, that means that everybody in the first 5 lines said at least $5. So 86.6% of the folks said they would support $5 or less on their tax bill. If you go to the $6 to $10, you go cumulative up again. So 62.6% of the folks said they would support $6 to $10.
Right, but go back to your last slide.
Okay.
But those percentages are of the 14% that said they would support a millage
But
increase.
now this is capital funding on this slide.
Okay,
The next slide was operational funding. So it's two different animals on that. So, and as you can see, it gets down to the $21 or more annually, only 16% would support that. So that was a telling sign that just a few dollars folks were okay with, but you start getting on up and they're not good with. Okay, then we get into some programming analysis. This is just some of the plans, some of the parks programs that we do use. And some of the recommendations they have, we need to develop performance measures for our programs. We need to know if they're being successful, if they're turning a profit, or if they're breaking even. So that's one of the things that we'll be implementing. Develop small-scale, unique special events. Currently, our staff at our centers have to do our special events, so keeping them small, geographically concentrated will allow us to do that. Also collaborate with senior services to identify gaps in senior programs. We basically do the same things. They do it for a select population. We do it from the cradle to the grave. So collaborate with them. Develop a plan to facilitate success with our youth sport programs because they are a lion's share of what we do. And then create a marketing plan and then customer service standards. Going into the staffing, these are recommendations that came from the consultant. This is the administration org chart. They're recommending creating an administrative services division. The director currently has 8 direct reports, everybody from part-time staff down to the receptionist. And the creation of an administrative services division will allow all the finance, budget, HR, sponsorship volunteers to go under that division manager. And then also to create a full-time administrative position for the director. And then our part-time analyst, they're responsible for all of our software rollouts, like our registration software and our work order system. Under operations, to reach the national benchmark of 13.5 acres maintained per staff, we need 35 staff positions. Now, we're 36 short from where we were back prior to the recession, and 19 of those are in ops. However, to create a third maintenance zone, which we had back during that time, would allow us to spread our folks out and be able to provide better daily maintenance to our parks. So that's one of the things that they recommended as well. Positions to implement our new work order system. We're implementing Cartograph, which is the same system that DOT uses, and that'll be rolling out at the end of this year. And then our park maintenance plan and standards need to be updated as well. They're at least 10 years old, so we'll be updating those. Under recreation services, our tennis program is currently managed by a part-time manager. So we have 5 full-time coordinators answering to a part-time staff person. Now, he's a real good one. He's our retired tennis manager, but they are currently answering to a part-time staff person. And then to hire a recreation specialist programmer for each of the centers, 5 of them, so we can do more programming and then for the coverage of rentals. Under cultural affairs, they recommend creating a special use facilities manager that would have the amphitheater, Miller Park, Hudgens, and Jenny T. Anderson Theater under those. Create a special events and festivals coordinator, because currently, like I said, we always have to pull folks out of our centers anytime we have special events or any type of festival. And then to also fund a currently unfunded specialist programmer at the art
Excuse me.
station.
Where's Hudgens? I don't know.
Hudgens is the Civic Center.
Oh,
It's the Civic Center complex. Romeo Hudgens Hall is the big building, and Jenny T is the small building, is the theater.
That might be helpful, although I didn't know the name of it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, the next this slide and the next one is a definition of the maps we're going to get to, so we'll go on to the maps, and I can do that as we go through. Go to the next one. Okay, this was a part of the gap analysis that they did, where they mapped each one of our pocket parks, community, neighborhood, regional. These are the mini parks. Some folks call them pocket parks. We have those highlighted in green, and they are 5 acres or less with a quarter-mile service area. The next one is neighborhood parks, 5 to 20 acres in size, and they serve a 1/2 mile service area. The next are our community parks, and they're 20 to 75 acres with a 1 to 3 mile service area.
Excuse me, Jimmy, do you have that radius defined somewhere in the legend in the document?
Yes, it's, the slides that I skipped over too quickly, I guess.
Okay, I see.
It's actually broken down on what's included in each one and their
Okay.
radius.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cupid, it's also, if you go back to one of the maps, Jimmy, and the right-hand side there where it says mini park service area, it says quarter mile.
Right. Right, that didn't have these don't have the actual size, property size. All right, these are regionals. We have 3 regionals, that are 50 to 250 acres with a service area. It always varies, but they actually did 5 acre circles on these. Most of the time, regionals do bring in folks from a little bit further out than just 5 miles, though. The next one is special use parks. And then we get to sports parks. And the last one is natural resource. And the final one is where they combine all of them, where they're all overlaid. You can see we don't have too many gaps that are still white. But if you look at traveling to regional parks versus a neighborhood or community park, there are definitely some gaps in the service area that we can fill in.
Did they put on the federal parks on here too?
Not this one. This is just county.
Okay. Because the county has a substantial amount of acreage in federal parks, do we not?
A lot of federal as well as city as well. The next one is the trail system that we borrowed from Eric and the folks at DOT. It shows proposed, and I think you're going to hear about it in a little while as well, proposed parks. All right.
Let me ask you a quick question on that.
Okay.
If the overlay map that you showed,
Go back one more.
for that one. And this does not include, as Commissioner Ott mentioned, the federal, nor it doesn't include cities.
Correct.
Yet all of that's in the county. So we would really actually have far greater coverage than this.
You do in the open space / natural resources for the federal. City parks will help this out as far as sports, community, neighborhood, and pocket. But then federal only helps the open space natural resource maps.
Well, personally, I mean, I think it behooves us to take a look at when we're trying to fill gaps, if we're not trying to fill gaps that overlap with the city that people go to anyway. Why would we want to duplicate that if it's within 3-5 miles
Absolutely.
of that? Well, the federal would be mainly, as you said, walking or hiking or something.
Yeah, open
I agree with
space.
that. But
Correct.
the other is, why would we want to build a new baseball complex if there's one 3 miles away in the city of Kennesaw, for example?
And we do have a map that shows all the city parks with their service areas in it. I was just trying to keep it down to the 10 to 15 minutes, I
No,
promise.
I completely understand.
imagine.
All I'm saying is we need to consider ourselves a whole county, not
Yes, sir.
county versus that, because when we spend our dollars, I want to spend them where we have a hole, not where we have a hole because it's not in the county, it's in the city.
Sure, sure.
And I know you're well versed and work with all of them. I just wanted everyone
Yes,
else to realize that as well.
Totally understand. Okay, on the budget assessment on the per capita, against our comparatives, Gwinnett County's at 37.808 per capita. Davidson is at 64.24. They also had some NRP at the National Recreation and Park, national standards, and we're currently at 26.82, per capita. On the recovery rate, the next one. We're only.
Hold on, could you go back to that last slide a minute? I was, so just looking at the population density per square mile.
Reasons we have fewer parks or per capita is that we have more density, so we have fewer opportunities to have parks.
True.
And again, does this take in all parks or just county parks?
Just the county.
This one is just the county as well.
Yes, sir.
Again, I think this is skewed.
But with each one of those others, they have city parks in their communities as well.
Right, but
And
what
they're
is,
not, and they're pulled out?
Yeah, they're pulled out as well.
but what's the square mileage? I mean, you know, for example, if we look at Davidson County, Tennessee, they have 1,357 population density per square mile. They may have to have more parks or per capita because if it's a bigger, area than Cobb County and the smaller population density, then they're gonna have more parks to be able to service people the same as we could in a smaller area with a greater population density. I mean, there may, you know, we may actually be benefiting from the economy of scale in our compactness.
And I hear what commissioners are saying, but I think there's some value in looking what the county has. I mean, we've had presentations that did benchmarking for other agencies that were county agencies. Some of them had departments where the cities had those departments. For instance, we heard from fire, and when they benchmarked, we didn't pull out these particular questions. And I mean, I hear what the commissioners are saying, but I think there's still a value in the exercise and looking from county to county data.
I agree, but I know Davidson County is a consolidated county.
It is.
So the city and the county are the same. So to me, that skews it right there in a lot of ways. And we're not counting apples to apples in Davidson County. We're only counting their population.
Right.
Not the fact of that.
So, I mean, and then maybe that may be helpful. Gwinnett County has cities in it comparable to Cobb County. There are some other localities that you did benchmark against, so it may be helpful to get that data too.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate what's provided thus far.
All right, on the recovery rate, this is what we actually generate back into the budget. We're at 22.7%, where the others are generating more revenue. It's going to be interesting to see what this number goes up to with the implementation of our new fees this year. I think we should at least pass Gwinnett once we have a full year of the new fees under our belt. So that shows that we're in the ballpark. No pun intended on that. Then on a historical perspective, it just shows the departmental budget from the 08 to 2017. All right, on the budget assessment recommendations.
All right, Jimmy, will you go back to that prior slide?
Sure.
May I ask, why are you comparing FY '08 to
That was just pre-recession.
pre-recession? Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Actually, if you add inflation in there, it's even less.
True. True. Some of the recommendations they made is for us to develop a revenue policy differentiating between our programs, to where we offer a good blend of free programs, a cost recovery of 25%, a cost recovery of 50%. And you do those all the way up to 100%, where you may have some one-on-one training, whether it be in the arts or personal training. Those should be recovering 100%. And then tier it down. So that's one of the things we'll be looking at. They actually included a model policy for us to look at, something that will allow us to differentiate. You've got the increased general fund tax dollars. I'm sure you hadn't heard that at all in the last year or so. So Expand programming opportunities for fee generation. We need to do a better job of offering more programs in our facilities. And then also to increase the programming and rentals at our indoor facilities. All right, the next is the opinion of probable cost. The consultants went out to every one of our parks properties and evaluated them on amenities and facilities, site maintenance, ADA accessibility, and the park improvement recommendations. And you will see that complete list of our parks and their recommendations when we submit a hard copy to you. The opinion of probable cost includes the gap analysis for the holes in our service delivery. And then new park recommendations were made. Some of the things that they recommended were a new community center in the Vinings area, 10 new parks located throughout the county of varying sizes, a new indoor multipurpose facility, and then the build out of the 14 park properties already owned, which can be phased over a 10, 12, 15-year cycle. And if you look at the cost breakdown of this, the existing park renovations is $80.6 million, new park facility and greenway development, $158 million, and then general design standards of just coming up with standards for signage, which we're already working on, restroom standard designs, things like that, that we would have accessible whenever we needed them. And then they had a list of funding options. Bond programs are splossed, regulatory funding, and all of these we currently explore. We use when possible, but these are all options for capital funding. So any questions, any comments?
I have a question. Now that my children are in summer camp, I'm visiting a lot more parks and recreation facilities. And just last week, my children were at the gymnastics center, and I was amazed to see not just the volume of programming, but the quality of the staff that's there, and also the number of people that are being served through that center. I was shocked. But I was also a little interested in seeing some improvements to the facility. It's a good way to put it. So as you looked at the dollar amounts for proposed improvements to existing facilities, what's your benchmark? What type of level of improvement are you trying to achieve when you assess a facility for improvement?
Well, safety is number one. But anything, that's our top priority, looking at all of them. And what we do is we look at all of the comments that the consultant made, and then we have even more insight because we know how the facilities are used daily. Safety number one. If we have a facility or a program that's busting at the seams, then we know that we need to expand. So expansion is number two.
Okay.
And we just kind of evaluate them all in that way. So that facility was totally redone in 2008. So it was not included in the 11 or the 16 program. So by the time the next opportunity comes around, it'll be one of the ones that we'll need to percolate to the top.
So with those two programs, you were targeting older?
Yes,
Wow.
ma'am.
Interesting.
Because it was expanded and renovated in 2008.
Okay, very good.
We are asking to pull the approval of this from tomorrow night's agenda. We're going to go back in and get you the hard copies, and I'll give you an opportunity to scan through it real good, and we'll bring it back to a future meeting to actually approve the document. Okay.
One thing, Chairman, I forgot to mention, one thing you didn't share in your presentation are the Friends of organizations or the associations that help with the facilities too, because they help to buffer some of the direct costs to the county.
Absolutely.
With maintaining those. It would be helpful to get a sense of how much we are spreading those costs out beyond the county too.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a significant relationship with a lot of organizations to maintain
Absolutely.
our facilities.
That's a good idea. Thanks, Jimmy.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate your time today. Okay, it's going to be Eric or Erica or all of you for the transit plan.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. My name's Eric Meyer. I'm the Planning Division Manager at Cobb County DOT, and this is Thomas Whitman. He'll be joining me today doing the presentation. He's with Nelson Nygaard. All right, so we've been working on the transit service plan for about 12 months now. It's a short-term plan, 0 to 5 years. This is not a plan that we're looking at rail, so just to be clear, a lot of folks have confused what we're doing with the transit service plan with HB 930. This is more of a short-term business plan. Goals for the transit service plan are some of the typical goals you'd have of a transit system. Improve reliability. It's been since the recession, since we've retimed our routes, so we need to get that done. Increase ridership, improve mobility for disadvantaged populations, evaluate transfer opportunities, ensure efficient and effective use of resources, and we have received comments about what do we do in the future. So we're looking at strategic approaches for improving our service beyond just the first few years. So the steps we've been following, throughout, we've been trying to gather public outreach and public involvement on the project. We've looked at some market analysis, both, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Analyze the existing service. A lot of data has been collected on how our system runs today. So we've been trolling through those numbers, trying to see what we could do different and better. Then we're evaluating and developing some service scenarios, and that's the thrust of today's presentation, is what are those scenarios? And then recommendations. So here's where we are. We've got the scenarios to show you today. And again, sort of the project schedule. We're here in June. All right, so activities to date. CobbLink serves over 10,000 rides per weekday. Most of our riders do ride 5 days per week, so we're not a system that a lot of folks just ride to the ball game or ride to the airport. We're a system where people are going to work, going to school, going to healthcare. Most boardings occur at key transfer points: Marietta Transfer Center, Art Center, Cumberland Transfer Center, H.E. Holmes, MARTA on the west side. So those red dots you see on the map next to it are the main places where people get on and off. And we have route profiles for all of our routes in the system. So as I mentioned, we haven't retimed the routes since the recession. So this is one of the main reasons we ask y'all's permission to do this transit service plan, is to address our on-time performance. It's not near where we think it should be. So you can see our local routes, we have varying on-time performance, ranging from 80% on the Route 10 down to a low of 50% on the Route 50. The express buses, I think Thomas will be able to answer some questions about that. We ran Commissioner Ott through some of this just an hour or so ago. Market and travel analysis, a lot of that looked at the traditional population and employment data, income, disabilities, all of that, socioeconomic data. But we also looked again at actual travel patterns in the county. We purchased once again some wireless signal data, cell phone data, to actually look at where are people going to and from. So we're not guessing where trips need to occur, but we know where they occur today.
Hold on, Eric, before you go to the next slide. Just for the board, because when I looked at this last week, that is not necessarily our system. That is just data, people driving.
Right, this is cell phones and where they go
Right, so
regionally.
that's not the CobbLink system. That's just, you know, like people in East Cobb, a lot of them are going down to Atlanta, but they're not necessarily going on CobbLink. This is using cell phone data.
And what does that do?
Well, it tells you where people are going from and to.
But not what they're riding.
Right.
So-
We have what they're riding, but this is to kind of give you an overall picture of where
Yeah,
people
are
are
there
going.
some markets we're missing? So right now we know where our park and ride lots are, but if we look at, you know, who's going downtown or Cumberland or Perimeter, are we serving some possible markets where people are starting their trip at home and trying to go to one of those major work centers? And
So you're
this-
telling me nobody in Ackworth, North Cobb, or West Cobb go downtown?
So this little dot right here shows West Cumberland, I believe. So we have these for each of those little sub areas. So I can show you some of the ones for your district when we get together Thursday.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I don't understand what the purpose of this is. If it doesn't show who's riding our buses and it only shows the area where our buses are, it doesn't show where we might need to go in the future because it doesn't show the pattern for other parts of the county that do not use our transit system.
We do have data for the other parts of the county that don't have transit today. This is all cell phones, not just who's riding the buses. This is for, we purchased cell phone data from someone who has cell phone data for 2 carriers. So it gives us an idea of where people want to go, even if they're not riding the bus today.
Again, did you purchase it for the whole county or just certain areas?
Whole county.
But this doesn't show that.
This is just a sample slide.
Got it.
Yeah, so I've got
Sample, you had me at sample. if
I've
you
got a
said
stack of these, yeah.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, I've got one of these for each of those little geographies you see. So the one up there, I can't read it from here, that's up in northeast, whatever it says, I've got a version of this for that geography.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, it's a county-wide plan. No one's left out. Community outreach. So we've had a variety of workshops, tabletop exercises, like you see in the picture here. We laid out a map, asked folks what they would like to see. We did that in Marietta, South Cobb, up at Kennesaw State University. We did a rider survey with about 2,200 folks were surveyed of our riders. An online survey, around 700 some odd folks chose to take that. We had a project website, received a lot of emails through the website and also through something Ross had set up when y'all did the transit work session. So probably had over 500 pages of emails. So lots of folks have thoughts on transit. In-person events, Taste of Marietta, Taste of East Cobb, and I personally did 15 Rotary Kiwanis and neighborhood group presentations. So we've been out and about talking to folks. All right, service scenarios. So what we're trying to do here is really bookend what we might do with transit in the short term. So we looked at the community input we received from our riders and otherwise. We looked at the data on demographics and travel patterns. And then we tried to test some different ideas. But in the end, we looked at 3 scenarios. A cut scenario where we cut 20% of the budget. A status quo scenario, what do we do with the money we have today? And then what if we had a plus up of 20%? So we were trying to bookend what we might do depending on the push and pull of our policy board. So the assumptions we looked at is, again, it's a 5-year plan. This is not a commuter rail and subway plan. We assumed the I-75 managed lanes were open, and I think you have a presentation on that next. We assumed Sunday service, since we have the federal grant for that, and also the Route 10X, since we've got the buses coming in a month for that as well. And that's the limited stop service from Town Center down to Midtown. The themes for the scenarios that Thomas is going to run you through is, again, leveraging that I-75 managed lane. We're going to have a very time-competitive trip for folks. So they'll be able to get on that express bus and go past the general purpose lanes without having to pay the toll. We're addressing on-time performance. Again, that's key. We have some routes that desperately need to be retimed immediately. Provide some service to new areas, explore partnerships with transportation network companies. That's what TNC stands for. That's your Uber, your Lyfts, things like that. And then we're looking to strengthen our core routes and perhaps enhance some connections within Cobb and also to our MARTA service territory that a lot of our folks are connecting to. All right, and so that's my tee up for now Thomas Whitman from Nelson Nygaard.
All right, I want to start off by just talking a little bit about what the current network does. The current network, serves a large variety of different market types and has different types of services that are out there, whether it's commuter services, flex route services, or local, circulator services in the Cumberland area, or regular local bus routes throughout there. It includes 2 transit centers as well as a series of park and rides as well. So this was the basis, where we looked at the strengths and weaknesses of the existing service, how things were operating, and where the market opportunities were today and where could they be in the future as well. So I want to go through each one of the different scenarios, starting with the cut scenarios. And again, these are bookends. It's not a recommendation that we cut 20% or increase service by 20%, but highlight what are the opportunities to reduce services as well as the opportunities to increase service from a market-based perspective. So the goals of the service reduction were to make sure that that those areas that have high ridership today would continue to have service, but focus on those areas or those times of service where where service was simply underperforming. And also, while we're trying to do this, if there's a low-cost way to improve on-time performance, to begin looking at doing that. And so this is what the map on the right shows what the service looks like today, and what the coverage might look like under the service reduction scenario. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on what each one of those elements might be. The benefits of this is obviously we reduced service costs by about 20%, but we also found 2 different routes where we could make minor changes and adjustments with minimal impact on ridership, and look at that as an opportunity to improve on-time performance. Looking at the service between Marietta Cumberland and Art Center with the 10X coming online, the new route that uses Cobb Parkway. We can look at having a frequent, every every 15 minutes throughout the day between Marietta, Cumberland, and Art Center. It's their highest ridership corridor. Ridership's actually fantastic in that corridor. Some of the trade-offs, however, with this include that flex services in South Cobb would go away with this. It's underutilized right now. It's not to say that there's no need, not a need in that area, but how it's being provided right now is simply not meeting up to snuff. Likewise, service up to Kennesaw would be reduced. Route 45 is one of the lowest performing routes. We'd be looking at removing service on that. We also did an assessment of what the service looked like in downtown Atlanta and as well in Midtown, and where people were getting on and off and how people were using MARTA rail services in order for distribution purposes. And so the recommendation in this scenario and in every scenario is to have the express services from Cobb County, from Park and Rides, come into either Art Center or Civic Center and stop and turn around and not do a loop through a very congested and time-consuming local streets in downtown Atlanta or midtown Atlanta. The last element of this, there's a series of reverse commute services, the 10A, 10B, 10C, that are really not carrying that many people, and we would be looking at having this service be taken over or shifted, folks using that service shift over to the new 10X service or Route 10 to provide that reverse peak commute service from Atlanta to Cobb County in the morning and from Cobb County to Atlanta or Fulton County in the afternoon. So that, by doing some of these elements, some of these trade-offs, and we were able to achieve a 20% reduction in costs and the number of hours provided, for that. And so this is, on a very high level, the elements that we looked at for this scenario. For the status quo scenario, this is really how can we do more with what we have right now? What are the opportunities, where we can reallocate resources from lower performing areas to higher performing areas, and thus grow our ridership and grow the amount of people that are utilizing the service right now. This because we also had more opportunity to have resources available to us by reallocating resources. We're able to do a little bit more in truly addressing some of the on-time performance and reliability issues that are pretty much endemic throughout the entire system. In essence, giving more time to those routes that need the time that are out there. And this is, right now on the right hand, this is what the service looks like right now. And this is what the service might look like, under the status quo scenario. And I want to talk a little bit about the highlights of each one of these as well. First of all, one of the benefits is that there's a significant improvement in frequency and reliability. As I mentioned earlier, we added time to certain routes that needed the increases in running times due to traffic congestion or simply there's variability in how long it takes to get from point A to point B. But one of the other things we looked at is how productive is service during midday times, and how what does ridership look during those times. And there's a series of areas where the most productive time on 3 different routes is during the midday when the service operates hourly. So we'd look at this scenario to help improve service from hourly service to every 30-minute service. And on the map right now, you can see, it's a little bit hard to see. This is what it is today, and there's a series of green corridors, routes 15, 20, and 50 that we'd be looking during midday times, increasing it from hourly service to every 30-minute service, which makes in essence, doubles the attractiveness of the service out there and should begin attracting more riders than are out there right now. We'd also be looking at, efficiency elements to help the service operate more effectively, with making changes to help multiple routes run on time. Have for instance, Route 30 not go through certain traffic bottlenecks. But also look at this as an opportunity, when we look at adding time to help on-time performance and, improving the frequency during midday times. This is really the baseline to say, if we were to design the service from scratch today, this is where we begin investing in these services. We'd also, and this can be done with your existing budget, and we can grow, from this. One of the other elements that's with this is from a trade-offs perspective and a summary perspective is the TNC zone. There's currently 3 different flex zones serving South Cobb, and it's not very effective right now. We'd be looking at almost tripling the size of the area served by on-demand services with this alternative, including service to Riverside, which is an employment area that we've heard a lot about, that people need to get jobs. And we feel like this private-public partnership would be able to do the same job or a better job, a more cost-effective job of serving a larger area at a lower cost. We'd be looking at also improving reliability and ensuring that 70% of existing riders by either adding services or adding time in the schedule, or ensuring that the individual routes have adjustments that allow for better on-time performance. That 70% of the existing routes would have an improvement that allows us to say this will improve on-time performance in the future. We'd also be looking at having 16 more miles over today. Again, it's between Marietta, Cumberland, and Art Center of service every 15 minutes throughout the day. This is high quality service that allows people to make trips without needing to consult a schedule and make discretionary trips, and really ties into some of the regional investments in rail at Art Center, and opens a door to having people easily be able to come into Cobb County for work or leave Cobb County to go to work or just make discretionary trips throughout the region.
I had a question.
Yes.
Right here. You're talking about improving on-time performance, but that doesn't take into consideration ridership, only performance of the route. So if we get it on time, it's still empty.
There is a relationship between on-time performance and how many people will use that route.
Really?
Yes, there is. And
Yeah. Okay. So if it's 15 minutes,
if
if it's 15 minutes on time, there are going to be 5 more people ride it. I mean, to me, the ones that need to worry about are the ones that nobody are riding, and cut them instead of making the ones that everybody rides on time, but they're still empty.
We need to see the ridership levels before we can answer that question.
And we actually,
it's a
we have
study.
we have those numbers.
Yeah.
This is just kind of like a real high level.
All right,
Okay,
the other
so-
question, these TNC partnerships, I'm assuming you're talking about Uber and Lyft and things like that. Is
Yes.
there a benchmark where other systems have used this before and tried it? Or we would be the first?
No, you are not the first. 2 years ago, I helped, Livermore, California implement, I think it was the number 2 or the number 3. By the time we got our insurance requirements right, we were going to be number 1, but it took a year to get our insurance requirements right. It's hard. It's a long and convoluted process. There are pilot projects across the country right now.
Okay.
So there are already lessons learned in terms of what to do and what not to do. But it has shown to whether it's replacing general public service or assisting with ADA services, the paratransit services, having ambulatory folks that are eligible for ADA, be able to use a partnership with Uber and Lyft. All of those have shown that there's been success stories with each one of those nationwide, whether it's in Boston, whether it's in California. You are not the first.
Thank you.
And just kind of roughly, and Eric, tell me if I get these numbers wrong, but right now the Flex costs us about $42 a ride, and the Uber Lyft was down to around $8 or $9, about $8 a ride. So there are some hurdles that you would have to get through, like Tom's talking about, but the cost difference is pretty high. And actually the level of service that you provide with Uber Lyft is actually higher than the Flex would be. But there are some hurdles that we've got to go through.
The opportunities are big.
Completely understand. Thank you. Thank you. And your staff consultant, Commissioner Ott, explained it really good.
Please.
All right. We also looked at, where are the opportunities for expansion? Where are, are there markets that are not being served? And one of the things we did look at was, as Eric showed, the one example of, where some of the desire lines where people have travel right now that don't necessarily comport to what the existing CobbLink, service network might look like. The expansion scenario goals, the first three of those are the same as what it is for the status quo. But ultimately, there's three new goals we'd be looking at. Serving new markets, extending some of the all-day, weekday frequency, and also looking at better connections to MARTA. And the key to this is not looking at Cobb County as its own separate travel market, but begin looking at this as a regional travel market. To say, how many of these trips are going between Cobb and Fulton County in particular. On the right-hand side right now is a map of what some of that might look like, and I'm going to talk about some of the new lines on the map that are associated with that in a couple of subsequent slides. But ultimately, it shows many of the same elements, and it builds upon what the status quo alternative, but then adds a new layer on top of that to allow for new and regional travel markets and serving some of the higher density areas, whether it's in Marietta, whether it's in Smyrna or in South Cobb or in Austell, that allows us to improve the service over what's there today. I'm going to give a couple examples of what that might look like. This is, currently, this is a frequency map that shows, the red lines show during peak times what service comes every 15 minutes, and this is what it is today, and the blue lines indicate what, service might look like in, every 30 minutes, during peak times. And, in the expansion scenario, you would see a slight change in where some of the South Cobb frequent service might go, but also see an improvement to bus every 30 minutes, going, it's Route 25, a restructured Route 25, which uses Mableton Parkway and Floyd from the Wellstar Hospital all the way to HE Home Station, and separates itself from the overlap with the current Route 30. So we have a different route serving different markets there, unlike, there's a little bit more overlap associated with that right now. But ultimately, it means that almost every route operates every 30 minutes throughout the day, and also Route 30, and as part of this scenario, which is the second highest ridership route that CobbLink operates, would operate every 15 minutes, basically from 6 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon, which is a huge increase in the availability of service and the convenience of service. And from a ridership perspective, again, this is, we have our top performer, which is Route 10, the Marietta Cumberland Art Center, and this would set up, a east-west as well as north-south corridor, to begin replicating that as well. Some of the new
Question,
areas.
excuse me, sir, regarding
Yes.
Route 30 and perhaps some of your other routes. I was surprised to see, I guess not to see recommendation to shorten Route 30. It's a very long route, and it, I forget how long it takes. I think I've traveled either 25 or Route 30, and just the 25, which I think is short, it was like a 90-minute trip. Is there an ideal length or time that it should take for you to get from one end of a route to another?
Ideally, and this is, ideally, I'd like to see, the maximum one-way travel time to be less than 90 minutes, and actually less than 75 minutes, and then have some recovery time so you can start the next trip on time.
Okay.
Route 30 exceeds that. And this is part of the recommendations on the capital side as well, if there were a transit center somewhere in the vicinity of the Wellstar hospital, then shortening that route and making sure that both the north half is on time and the south half is on time, would be an easier opportunity. This scenario assumes that that is not the case, but if, as part of the capital recommendations, we'll likely see a transit center location at somewhere in that area, it will open up the opportunity to do something like that effectively.
Okay, because I understand that's a SPLOST project, so it'd be good to see how that can be incorporated in your plans so the efforts can be coordinated. And your work helps give those plans some life and ability to see how they would look if they were brought into fruition. So as part of your efforts moving forward, I would like to see that scenario being considered so that we can have more realistic discussion about how we shorten that route.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some of the elements, in terms of what are some of the new areas that would be served, we'd be looking at having a new route from Ackworth to KSU and to Town Center. And then also then, continuation, so there'd be a connection between downtown Kennesaw and Town Center as well. Be looking at having a new route, that operates, that connects some of the higher density apartments on Roswell Road to the east of downtown Marietta, with the system. We'd be looking at, connecting, making a connection to Douglas County, to Highway 6, so that, folks that live in Austell or in South Cobb have the opportunity to access some of the commercial areas, both from a job perspective as well as a retail perspective of, accessing grocery stores, for instance, that are located just across the county line. Be looking at new service, connecting Cumberland to Smyrna and then using Atlanta Road and turning around across Chattahoochee River by Bolton. There's a turnaround point for 3 different MARTA routes. Right now, there's only 2 different connections with MARTA. And if we looked at the travel flows from Vinings across into Fulton County, this would open a door, to allow for that connection to take place without having to go out of direction to Cumberland or down to H.E. Holmes. It's an opportunity that is so close yet so far right now. It's about a 2 or 3 mile gap in service right now that we'd be looking at closing. We'd be looking at a new service connecting Cumberland area with the airport. Operating 7-day-a-week service. Along 285. Down south to Hartsfield Airport. Also, looking at what is the opportunities to connect service, from Cobb County to the 3rd big regional destination, which is Perimeter. And we're looking at a new connection. We're calling it Route 285, which uses, Route 285, Interstate 285 between Cumberland and Perimeter. And this is going to be one of the things that, 10 years from now, when the managed lanes opens up, this is when the market potential for this truly becomes much, much better, because some of the on-time performance issues that are evident on 285 right now would be mitigated as a result of that. But what this does, the expansion scenario begins looking at, regional connections, new connections to Perimeter, new connections to down Atlanta, and Marietta Parkway down to Bolton, crossing Chattahoochee River, connections to the airport, a new connection, using Mableton Parkway, and then MLK to get to H.E. Holmes. From a travel time perspective, it's about the same. But from what markets we could open up in terms of ridership, getting people from Fulton County into job opportunities to Cobb and vice versa, it simply opens up the door, to more and better travel connections over what's there today. As with the status quo scenario, we'd also be looking at 42 square miles of on-demand coverage services with Uber Lyft connections to help complement some of the fixed route investments that we'd be looking at in the South Cobb area. So from a next steps perspective, it's to take what we've seen today, and again, this has been a high-level presentation on this. I could probably talk hours and hours on this if I wanted to, but to refine the scenarios based on some of the feedback we get from you and from the tab later today. Begin looking at community input. We've had 2 different series of different meetings to help us understand what the needs are within the community, and this is going back and say, here's what we heard. Here's specifically how we addressed what we heard, and they'll come back and tell us. They're a tough judge to say, here's where we really like this, and there's going to be things that they really don't like about this, and then it's going to be our job to refine that, refine the alternatives and refine the scenarios so that whatever ultimately is the final service recommendations reflects the needs of the community and reflects what the public has to say about this as well. As from a next steps perspective, we are looking at refinement and having the public outreach process, starting in late August, basically when kids are back in school and, we have students back, that allows us to get a full representation of, the, public response to the pros and cons of our specific recommendations. Any last questions?
Commissioners? I know
Just
Commissioner-
thank you for all your work on this, and I know you've done a lot of outreach and heard some varied perspective of different residents, but appreciate you taking all of that into account and coming up with what you have so far.
Commissioner Rutherford? No. Okay, thank you. Looking forward to your product in the early fall.
Thank you.
Let's just take a quick 5-minute break here, and then we'll do. Well, I don't want to rush her. I'll compromise. I need 3 minutes. Are you going to introduce her, Erica?
I was.
Okay, all right. So I got to make sure we're back on here. We're back on. I've been saying all these things off the record, but they're now on the record.
You didn't do that.
All right, Erica, it's all yours.
Okay, so our next presentation is Miss Annie Gillespie is going to be presenting on the Northwest Corridor and the Peach Pass. So I'm going to let her speak.
All right.
Hello.
Hello.
Right off the bat, I want to thank you for inviting us to come here and speak. Unfortunately, us is now just me. Stephen Lively, the project manager from GDOT, is currently, as you can imagine, busy today. So unfortunately, I will not be able to answer any of your questions about the retaining wall. So Northwest Corridor Express Lanes, this is 29.7 miles of new capacity express lanes that are built either on the west side of the interstate or in the median of the interstate. It's an express lane, so you will need a Peach Pass in order to use the lanes. We are anticipating 16.9 million annual trips by 2028. This is 2040, but that's actually 2028, so within the first 10 years. And these are reversible express lanes, so the current operating assumption is that they will flow inbound to the city in the morning for the morning commute, and then they will reverse in the midday and flow outbound in the afternoon for the afternoon commute. The overall project budget was $834 million. That's an all-in cost. That includes GDOT, that includes CERTA, that includes the contractor, and all the consultants that are required to support the implementation of the project. As far as I know, we are still on schedule to open in late summer. We're currently targeting right now the end of August. Construction is 95% complete, and I have some pictures later on in the slide that sort of show some of the construction progress. This is just a quick map, very high-level map of the project. The facility is 2 lanes reversible from 285 up to the split. And then it is 1 lane in the median from the split on 75, and then 1 lane in the median on the split up 575. What you're seeing here, these are all the various types of access points, and we'll walk through a little bit of what those look like. But there are what turns out to be 46 different trip permutations you can take in the express lane, 46 different combinations of entry and exits, northbound and southbound, that you can take. Why are we building the Northwest Corridor Express Lanes? It has a lot of benefits. One of the primary benefits is that it provides an additional option for users in the corridor. It provides more reliable trip times for those who choose to ride transit or those who choose to ride in the express lanes. It improves interactions between the roadway users. There are no trucks allowed on the express lanes, so it provides users an opportunity to drive. Those who don't like to drive near large trucks, they have an opportunity to get out and be barrier separated from them. It reduces barriers separating workers from employment centers. A lot of the infrastructure around the express lanes has been improved due to the construction of the express lanes, and then there's other reasonable benefits as well. So how do you access a reversible express lane? At all of the entrance points, if an entrance point is closed because it's flowing in another direction, there's a series of gates that block the entrance to an express lane. So we have a series of signs as you approach an entrance that would either say whether it is open or it's closed, and then you start to see a series of gates. This is a picture of the prototype site that the contractor was required to provide in order to verify that their gates and their gate software and their sign software all worked in tandem correctly before they went out and constructed on the roadway. But the gates will look like this on the roadway. You've probably already seen some of the barrier gates being installed. So the first gate is the first warning gate. They will all have a giant banner on it that says "Do not enter." They all have flashing lights on the top so that you can see them during the day and at night. And then there's a series of warning gates, depending on how long the access point is, before you come to an actual barrier gate. And that barrier gate there is designed to keep a driver who somehow manages to miss the 3 to 8 warning gates that are in advance of an entrance point from entering the facility in the wrong way. You cannot run into a barrier gate without realizing that you've just run into a barrier gate. This is a representation of what an arterial access point could look like. So in the open direction, you can see that the gates are up, whereas in the reverse direction, you can see that the gates are down. A lot of the access points, primarily on 575 and then on 285 and 75, the one access point south of 285 on 75 are what we call slip ramps. So you just sort of weave in from the general purpose lane, similar to how you would weave into the HOV lane or, weave from 75 to 85 when you're on the connector. So you'll see a series of entrance signs, and then the gates will be up, and then you essentially choose to be from the left-hand lane to merge over, weave over into the express lane. This is an actual picture of one of the slip ramp exits on I-575. So this would be someone who is choosing to exit from the express lane. They would essentially choose to weave to the right, and then they exit through the toll point right into the general purpose lanes. So who's allowed to use the express lane? So I already said that no trucks are allowed in the express lane. We are what we call a registered facility, which means you need to have a valid transponder to use the facility. And that is either you can have a Peach Pass, if you still have your old cruise card from Georgia 400, that's a valid transponder. If you have a Sun Pass with Florida Department of Transportation or a Quick Pass from North Carolina, those are all valid transponders for the express lanes. If you do not have a valid transponder, you will be treated as a violator and you will be sent a violation. Most vehicles are required to pay the toll. So unlike 85, which has a hot 3 component, so if you had 3 or more people in the lanes, you could ride toll-free. The Northwest Corridor Express lanes is an express toll lane. There is no occupancy component. So all the vehicles will pay the toll. Motorcycles pay, alternative fuel vehicles pay, and all other passenger vehicles pay. Transit vehicles are exempt from the toll. Emergency vehicles, active duty military are also exempt from tolls.
How are the active duty military going to be exempt?
So essentially, when they're in it's like a post process. So they would, if they ride in the lane and then they get a violation, they would have to call and they would have to show us documentation, and then their tolls and fines would be waived.
Is there provisions under the Peach Pass where active duty military can get a Peach Pass?
So anybody can get a Peach Pass.
Right.
The issue is you have to be on active duty. So
Right.
generally, you would
Right.
have to have that paperwork to show to waive
Okay,
those fees.
it's going to be interesting. Okay, thanks.
So just a little bit about how all electronic tolling works. So there are no toll booths. We do all of the actual toll collection and the violation enforcement electronically through the use of equipment. So that equipment is, we have antennas that are hanging overhead. This is actually a picture on 75 South Project, but it's very similar to Northwest Corridor. So we have antennas hanging from the overhead gantry. Those are actually what's reading the transponder that you have in your vehicle. We have laser scanners and loops in the pavement that are classifying the length of the vehicle. They're helping us distinguish between 2 vehicles that travel close together versus a vehicle with a trailer. The loops also give us speeds, vehicle counts, and then they also trigger what we call a VES camera. That's a violation enforcement system camera. So when you drive over those loops, it knows when your vehicle entered the field of view, and it will take a picture of the back of your vehicle for the license plate. And then it automatically characterizes those license plate numbers, and we'll check to see if you have a valid Peach Pass account or another valid agency account.
Which one reads the Peach Pass? Because it's not a transponder, it's just it's a barcode,
It's
right?
a sticker. That is a transponder. There is a little antenna in that sticker.
Oh, there is?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to hit the code, it just reads the antenna?
Yeah, so when the transponder goes under the antenna, there's enough radio frequency coming out from that antenna to sort of wake up the transponder, and then it submits the transponder number back and forth probably 20 to 30 times in the second that you drive under the antenna. And then as soon as you bypass, it just goes quiet again.
Okay, I was just a little concerned. I got one from a motorcycle and I wasn't sure where it had to be to hit. So it's an antenna, not a barcode scanner.
Correct. The barcode is for our internal inventory purposes when we ship it out so we can track it. We don't read the barcode, we
What's
read
a
the antenna.
tiny
If you hold it
antenna?
up to the light, you can kind of see the antenna inside.
Got it, okay.
Which is why you can't peel them off. If you peel it off, there's a high likelihood you'll break that little antenna in the sticker.
I'm glad you said that, because I was worried he was going to tattoo that barcode on his forehead. But we won't have to worry about that now.
So then the VES is kind of a backup to the transponder?
It's there to enforce people who do not have transponders.
So
Correct.
if
And it is
so
a
it doesn't-
backup.
So it comes on at the same time then, right, as you go over that induction loop or whatever?
Correct.
Okay.
So any vehicle goes through, you read the transponder, you take a picture of the license plate, and then when it makes it to the account-based system in what we call the back office, it looks to see, it takes that transponder number and finds an account and just charges the account. If there is no account, then it will go down and take the license plate and then try to find you from your license plate.
Is it impacted by heavy rain?
No.
Wow, it's pretty amazing. Okay.
If it was, we would make sure that our integrator who we pay to do this pays us.
Yeah.
One other
sure.
quick, I
It's
mean,
not allowed to.
I know when I got mine, I had to sign up with a certain vehicle,
Mhm.
but does it really check that? I mean, if you're say in a rental car or something, you take it with you? Or
So it's a sticker, so if you peel it off, you'll actually end up probably breaking that antenna that's in that sticker. It's not really meant to be peeled on and off. So if you break that antenna, it won't work anymore. Generally, we have a business rule that we have a 1-to-1, so one transponder to one license plate. And people will sometimes they'll end up getting sent a violation because they'll get a new license plate number and they won't update their Peach Pass account. So, you'll go through the lanes over and over and over and over and over again. And just one day, maybe your tag, you have something sitting on your dashboard, or for some reason, your Peach Pass doesn't read that day. So the actual system won't know that you had a valid Peach Pass because it didn't read it, and they'll go to your license plate, and then they'll try to look you up based on your license plate. And if you have a valid account, they'll just charge your account. But if you somehow have a new license plate or you've put it on a different vehicle, they'll send you a violation because they don't know, the system doesn't know. So that's why we have the 1-to-1. Some other agencies have those big, the big box transponders you pay $25 for, and you can move those from vehicle to vehicle. We do not. We do not use that technology in Georgia. So the express lanes are going to be dynamically priced. So we use dynamic pricing to make sure that the express lanes are flowing. We're trying to maximize vehicle throughput and also make sure that these trips are reliable. So that means the rates go up and down based on the actual traffic numbers in the express lane and or in the general purpose lanes. And these rates can change as frequently as every 3 minutes or every 5 minutes or every 15 minutes, depending on what the traffic is doing. Every user of the express lane system will see a toll rate sign prior to their entry, so they will know what the rate is before they get into the facility. And we have a business rule that essentially says you will not pay more than what you saw on those signs. So we have built-in windows just to make sure that if you saw it and it changed 20 seconds after you drove past it, that you're getting the benefit of the doubt of the lower toll rate. And we display the rate to the next destination and to the furthest destination, which is a shorthand for here's the least amount of the toll you may pay and here's the most amount in a toll you may pay. And if you take some trip in the middle of a middle distance, you'll pay somewhere in the middle of those two rates. An example of the signage that you would see along Northwest Corridor, so the ones on the left, that is an example of the arterial road. So if you're accessing it from Big Shanty or Terrell Mill or Roswell Road, you'll see a sign similar to what's on the left. And because it's reversible, you'll also see that the direction will switch from south to north. It'll tell you whether you need to keep right to access the express lanes or keep left. And then the actual destination and the rates will change on that full matrix piece on the bottom. The example on the right is for general purpose slip ramp entries where that'll either have a price or that will say closed. All of these signs, you've probably seen them out there now. They're all currently being tested. You'll see sometimes some of the toll rate signs may have a rate on it. A lot of the other signs will say message 1, message 2. This is actually a picture of them doing a pixel test, so they have to light up every single pixel on the sign to make sure that every single one of them can light up before the state will accept that sign from the contractor. So we answered some of these questions already, but what is a Peach Pass? So it's that small transponder sticker. It sticks to your windshield behind the rearview mirror. If you have a car with an antenna that actually runs throughout the windshield, we also have what we call a headlamp sticker. That's clear, that can go on your headlamp because the antenna in the windshield will interfere with the antenna in the Peach Pass. We do not charge for the Peach Pass. A lot of toll agencies charge for their transponders. We give them away with every account that is opened. It's connected automatically to your Peach Pass account, which is a prepaid account where you put $20 on, and then every time you go through it just deducts the $1 or $2 from your account. And then this is what is actually communicating with that overhead antenna. So how do you get a Peach Pass? There's lots of different ways you can get a Peach Pass. You can go to peachpass.com and sign up online. You can call our customer service center. You can download the Peach Pass app and sign up for it right there. That gives you the ability to, if you're using 85, change your toll mode, or review all your transactions. You can come visit us downtown at our retail location. 2 weeks ago, we opened up a spot at the Kennesaw DDS. So you can come, when you come renew your license, you can come and get your Peach Pass then as well. Or you can go to a Walgreens or a CVS and get what we call a pay and go Peach Pass. So that's in with all the gift cards. It kind of operates like a gift card.
Question about the pay and go, because I know it used to be that if you got a pay and go, you could not add to it. The regular Peach Pass, you add like the $20 or whatever, but the pay and go, you couldn't. Can you now?
So if you choose to get a Pay and Go Peach Pass and you want it to auto replenish, then you would need to call and convert that to what we call a personal account, because we would need an actual credit card to automatically replenish it. You can replenish it with cash by, essentially, they come with the reload card, so it's sort of like keeping a reloadable gift card, and you can go back to CVS and say, put another $20 on this card, and then that will be applied to your account. But these are actually anonymous accounts for us. We don't have anyone's license plate information. We only really have the Peach Pass number. So if your Peach Pass doesn't read, or you want to ride in toll-free mode, I don't have any account information on you. I can't reach out to you. And you know, so if you're not keeping up with how much in tolls you have remaining, then you may end up violating. But you can call it any time and convert it to a regular toll personal account.
I think you can do that through the app as well. I did that, so. I wish I.
Yeah, the Pay and Go Peach Pass actually is our most popular way of people opening accounts. When you combine all other forms of opening accounts together, it still is higher than that. So these are just a few pictures of the construction on Northwest Corridor. So like I said before, we're 95% complete. This is a picture of the reversible lane that actually is going to be going up and out of the median. This is on the south side of the project, right near 285. I believe that's Windy Hill in the background there. So this is the reversible ramp that flies up and over to connect with the rest of the express lanes for people entering or exiting from 75 on the south side. The express lane on this one is what's in yellow. So this is the 285 westbound on to the express lane, or the 285 eastbound off onto 285 flyover ramps. The bulk of the construction that is remaining is that little area right there in the middle where the 75 shield is, and south of that, that is the bulk of the work that still needs to be done, is the widening down near 75 and 285. That was delayed due to the 85 bridge collapse. Here's a picture of one of our dedicated arterial access points. So this is Big Shanty. It's kind of hard to see it here, but you can see how the express tolling on the right-hand picture sort of veers off to the right. It goes down to meet with the arterial road, and then it's just sort of it's the same as any interchange intersection there with signals, except that, you know, some times of the day the signal may give you a left turn signal, and some days it may not. This is a picture of I-75 at Windy Ridge Parkway. This is also part of the area that's still slightly under construction. All of this south end is really our last mile to get the project complete. Here's a picture of the workers doing slipping in some barrier wall along the express lane. And then this is really my last slide. So if you have any other questions, or you think of questions after I leave, all this information is on peachpass.com. And that's really it. So is there any other questions?
When will the section be done across the north part of the arc of 285?
North part of the arc. So the substantial completion date for the contractor is July 19th.
Okay.
So everything of that is supposed to be done by July 19th.
Okay, and then there's a future plan to have express lanes also from 75 to I-20 on both sides of the of 285. Do you know when that completion date is?
So there's, from I-20 on the west side, I believe right now they're targeting 2025.
Okay,
And then the top end between 75 and 85, I believe, is currently 2028.
okay, all right, I was just curious. All right, thanks. Anybody else? That was really informative. Thank you for coming down today, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Erica, and with that, we're adjourned.